Well, today we're going to hear about Paul's final instructions.
Yep, he's wrapping up the book of 1 Corinthians, and so that's what we're going to be talking about today. He's Chris, and I'm Jeff, and we're the Bible guys. Okay, Chris. So I don't know if you knew this. I think this is only rumor, so I can't confirm it, but that this incredibly popular segment is worthy of an Emmy. Apparently, people just love you. They think you're the best.
Whatever.
So
I hate when you do that kind of stuff.
It seems worthy. I don't know about it.
Whatever, dude.
But anyways, this whole segment is called "What Made Chris Mad This Week." Right? So
I'm not sure people love it that much.
They love it, man. Everybody talks about it. Everywhere I go sit down in a restaurant.
Stop.
Hey, are you one of the Bible guys?
Stop. That is not true.
Hey, so what made Chris mad this week?
That is so not true. He's kidding. Okay, so
so what made Chris mad this week, Chris?
I do have something that made me mad.
You do?
I do. So, okay, you know what it is? It's Tim Hortons coffee cup lids.
Oh, okay.
So let me explain something to you right now.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes.
If you work at Tim Hortons, get a realization here. Get a life, okay?
Okay.
Because I am so angry at Tim Hortons coffee cup lids.
Wow.
So right outside of this podcast studio, right next door, is a Tim Hortons.
Yes.
Okay?
Right.
You pull through and you say, can I have a coffee? It doesn't matter what size you order. Any normal coffee that's not a specialty coffee doesn't give you a domed lid. A domed lid has like, it kind of contours to your mouth, right? Mm-hmm. Some of them have, like a Dunkin' Donuts has the kind where, there's a little cap for it. When you flip open the cap, it sort of snaps into the lid, right? Okay. Even 7-Eleven have dome lids. Heck, this coffee, this nasty thing from Kroger has a domed lid that I have in my hand with something like this. Okay, Tim Hortons, it's the flat lid that you have to literally peel back. You rip back. What ends up happening is it cuts your lips. I'm not even kidding. It cuts your lips, and then then this part right here cuts your lips, and then it leaks. So all three of those things.
That's terrible.
And I'm thinking to myself, okay, 7-Eleven figures this out.
Right.
You guys are stinking Tim Hortons.
That's right.
They have phenomenal coffee. So here's what I actually have to do. I have to drive through, and I bet you I'm the only one that does this. I'm like, can I have a medium coffee? Can I have a domed lid? Because they have them.
They have them. They just don't want to use them.
They don't want to use them. They put them on like foamy stuff, right? And they're like, sure. And then they'll put a domed lid on it. And by the way, their dome lids are great. So why?
So those Canadians, right?
Yes,
is that it?
That's what it is.
It's got to be because they're Canadians.
Yes.
Because all the American companies, they don't do that.
Be careful, because there's Canadians that listen.
So we're just telling them to get their business together.
Yeah.
Right?
Hey, if you're Canadian,
that's right.
Actually, I'm being serious.
Call Tim. Call Tim.
Tim Horton.
And let him know.
If you work at Tim Hortons.
Because there's like 15 Canadians. They all know each other.
If you work at Tim Hortons, I beg of you to do something about this.
Yes?
I beg of you.
Beg of you. Call it the Zarbal lid.
No.
Yeah.
Just call it normal.
Oh, okay.
Call it human, like, logic.
Yeah.
And, like,
I don't know why I was taking shots at Canadians. They're such nice people.
They are super nice.
Super nice. Incredibly polite.
Actually,
people.
They're known to be the nicest people ever.
Well, did you remember the game Angry Birds?
Yes.
Yeah. So it didn't do well in Canada. They had to rename it. Sorry, I was so cross birds.
But
yeah. So, anyways, yeah, Canadians are so nice. But hey, call Tim and have him fix his lids.
Yes, because they are super, super irritating.
Okay. Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. If you agree with Chris, let him know in the comments.
Telling you what.
That's all right. So
makes me mad.
It's cathartic, though, isn't it? Get it off your chest.
Just hate it.
Yeah. Okay. So we are in wrapping up now. 1 Corinthians, the letter to the Corinthians, and Paul is trying to kind of button up all the details, because remember, this whole letter he's writing in response to a letter that they sent him. Right. So you asked about, what about marriage? You asked about what about the resurrection? You asked about all these things. And so Paul is responding back, and he's wrapping this up because they were receiving a special offering for the poor people in Jerusalem. And then he has a couple of other final instructions about just how they live their life and leadership here. So We'll just start in verse 1. We'll read to the end of the chapter. He says, "Now, regarding your question about the money being collected for God's people in Jerusalem, you should follow the same procedure I gave to the churches in Galatia. On the first day of each week, you should each put aside a portion of the money you have earned. Don't wait until I get there and then try to collect it all at once. When I come, I'll write letters of recommendation for the messengers you choose to deliver your gift to Jerusalem. And if it seems appropriate for me to go along, they can travel with me. I'm going to visit you after I have been to Macedonia, for I am planning to travel through Macedonia. Perhaps I'll stay a while with you, possibly all winter, and then you can send me on my way to my next destination. This time, I don't want to make just a short visit and then go right on. I want to come and stay a while, if the Lord will let me. In the meantime, I'll be staying here at Ephesus until the festival of Pentecost. There's a wide open door for great work here, although many oppose me. When Timothy comes, don't intimidate him. He's doing the Lord's work just as I am. Don't let anyone treat him with contempt. Send him on his way with your blessing when he returns to me. I expect him to come with the other believers. Now, about your brother Apollos, I urged him to visit you with the other believers, but he was not willing to go right now. He will see you later when he has the opportunity. Be on guard. Stand firm in the faith. Be courageous. Be strong, and do everything with love. You know that Stephanas and his household were the first of the harvest of believers in Greece, and they are spending their lives in service to God's people. I urge you, dear brothers and sisters, to submit to them and others like them who serve with such devotion. I'm very glad that Stephanas and Fortunatus and Achaicus have come here. They've been providing the help you weren't here to give me. They have been a wonderful encouragement to me as they have been to you. You must show your appreciation to all who serve so well. The churches here in the province of Asia send greetings in the Lord, as do Aquila and Priscilla and all the others who gather in their home for church meetings. All the brothers and sisters here send greetings to you. Greet each other with a sacred kiss. Here's my greeting in my own handwriting. Paul. If anyone does not love the Lord, that person is cursed. Our Lord come. May the grace of the Lord Jesus be with you. My love to all of you in Christ Jesus.
Here it is.
So I think it's funny. He always ends his little books here usually saying, so now I'm going to sign it myself, Paul.
Yeah. Isn't that funny?
Right. So he's using a secretary, as was common, using a secretary who was good at, scribe, maybe somebody with really good penmanship. People were trained actually to take notes as people were articulating big letters. And so that's what he's doing. But he wanted to make sure there were people who were claiming that they were speaking for Paul. So then he would sign his letters to make sure that they understood that this was really him. Yeah.
That's great. Which is not any different than today.
Any different than now. Yep.
Yeah. And so really, like, you've sort of chosen, because you're the one that picks out these scriptures that we read. Yeah. You sort of chose a bunch of personal farewells and instructions. So there's a lot of things here that are just very applicable to those people and their personal relationship.
Well, there's also a few things in here that I think, little nuggets. And I think that what we wind up doing is digging out a few nuggets. First of all, he's talking about this special offering that they're receiving. Jerusalem, the church in Jerusalem was under tremendous persecution at the time. They're just getting roughed up. And at that point, then they were getting their land confiscated. Sometimes people were losing their businesses. People were being put in prison. When the husband or the man of the house would be put in prison, the whole family would struggle financially because they were dependent on him or whatever. And so Paul began going through the richer churches in Asia Minor. Galatia was fairly wealthy, many of them. Corinth obviously was wealthy. There were some wealthy communities. He was receiving a special offering to send back to care for those that were struggling. And, at one point he mentions, especially those that are of the household of faith, we should treat well. Right? We should treat everybody well. But he says, especially those that are of the household of faith. So in this situation, he's receiving an offering. And what he's saying is, make a plan. He said, don't wait until I show up and then just give me your leftovers. Right. Instead, at the beginning of every week, here's a plan. It's not a requirement. But set aside something at the beginning of every week based on what you made that week so that you're building up a nest egg to be able to give to serve them. That way I'll be able to raise more money. That's very strategic. He's having them think, who can I help with my money? And then make a plan so that it builds up over time so I can have the maximum amount of impact and help.
Yeah, and by the way, there's so many verses that talk about financial planning, and in fact, there's more verses on that topic than any other in the whole Bible. Yeah. And when he talks about money, intentionality seems to be really the main thing right?
Yeah.
Not to just be careless or, think of it last or, giving to God the leftovers. It's always intentional. So even when it comes to instructions on tithing, instructions on giving, tithes and offerings being over and above your tithe.
Yeah.
It's all about intentionality.
Yeah.
Just sit back and say, okay, how do we intentionally want to bless people?
And intentionality requires a plan of some sort. I think about that. And the reason why I thought this was appropriate right before Christmas, especially, is, so I grew up, we were pretty poor. I think you guys grew up sometimes in a struggle the same way, right? But we were, I didn't know that we didn't have much because nobody around me had much, right? So everybody was poor around us. But I look back at the incredible Christmases that we had. And, we raised most of our own food, and we split wood, and we heated our house with wood, and our whole house was about 800 square feet, and it was just, we got by. We did okay. But my mom did these great Christmases, and now that I look back at it, every summer she would host or have a pretty big yard sale, and then she did some crafts, particularly with regard to flowers, and she would sell those through the year. And then that would then, because Christmas was such a big deal for her, she didn't grow up in a great family situation. And so Christmas was a big deal for my mom, and still is. And then she kind of has this gift of giving. She's a very generous person. She would use strategic moments throughout her year to build up a little war chest. And then starting in August, she's making plans towards Christmas.
Wow.
And we'd have these amazing Christmases. So I can remember we didn't have hardly anything. And through the rest of the year, I didn't get lots of new toys. I get an occasional Hot Wheel or something, but not much. But at Christmas, my friends were getting, the Land Speeder and the Millennium Falcon, and I got a Land Speeder too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those were expensive back then, or whatever. And I remember now, not then I didn't realize it, but now I realize her generosity, her desire to be generous required that she had a really good plan in place. And she was able to achieve so much more than if we had consumed everything that she'd spent up to that, made up to that point. Then, 3 weeks before Christmas, she could have never made such an amazing Christmas for us, if she hadn't had a plan. And this is what he's talking about here. I'm not just talking about Christmas. If we have a desire to be generous and to do good, a plan will always allow us to do way more good. And that's what he's trying to tell them there.
By the way, I still remember the prices of the Land Speeder.
Oh, do you really?
Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
It was $15 for a Land Speeder. And then,
which is like 45 now.
Right.
Yeah.
And then there was a really massive, remember the AT-ATs, the AT-AT walkers?
Yeah.
Remember on the snow planet of Hoth? Those were $90.
Wow.
And back then, $90 were just
$300.
At least. Mm-hmm. And my buddy Rich Frondorf got an AT-AT.
Wow.
An AT-AT walker.
Well, I had a friend who had one.
I was really jealous.
Yeah, that was amazing. I wasn't jealous. I just went over to his house and played with it.
I was super jealous.
Yeah. What about the Millennium Falcon? Do you know the price of the Millennium Falcon back then?
I don't. Because I had the Land Speeder. Rich had the AT-AT. And I knew somebody who had the Millennium Falcon, but I'm not sure.
Isn't it funny how here we are, we're 50 years old, and in that season, 51, in that season, Star Wars just took over those Christmases, right?
Yeah,
it was huge. Yeah.
For sure.
So, having a plan for your generosity will make your generosity have greater impact. That's what he's talking about. So set it aside week by week. Don't just wait until the end and then just throw some cash at it, because you're not going to have nearly as much. So that's the one thing. The other one is he's talking about the value of the people in his life. And I think it's really important. He didn't have to acknowledge Apollos, who was many people viewed as a competitor. He didn't have to acknowledge Stephanus and Achaicus and these guys. He didn't have to mention Priscilla and Aquila.
Fortunatus.
Yeah, Fortunatus. But he did. And there's something special about that here's the superstar in Christianity at the time. Mm-hmm. And he's saying, hey, I also want to recognize these guys are doing great work. Mm-hmm. And by the way, I'm going to send Timothy, because I can't come, but I'm going to send Timothy, give him some honor and respect. He's trying to build up the rest of the people, not just drawing attention to himself. Because, you might think he's a little self-centered when he said, and I worked even harder than all the other apostles. Remember when he said that?
Right,
just the other one?
Right.
But that wasn't his heart. What he's doing is he's using it for proof of the fact that he's, putting in the work and doing stuff. But you see him wrap up all of his letters by saying, I love these people, and you should too. Give them respect. And he's telling them, honor them and respect them. it goes a long way if you're a leader to be making sure that you're not just taking all the credit, but that you're,
Yeah, and by the way, speaking into Paul, he was actually the opposite of the bragger, because actually, remember when he said
he's embarrassed by it when he does it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Because he actually says, hey, if anybody has a right to complain, it's me. And then he starts listing, like, I've been shipwrecked, I've been beaten with rods,
right.
I've been thrown in jail, and he just gives an example, like, and he doesn't like to do that, but basically he's in a spot where God has allowed him to be in the spot to where, he can sort of say to everybody, hey, I have more right to do this than you.
Right.
I have more right to brag. I have more right to complain. I have
but
all
when
these
he's writing
rights.
that, at one point he says, "But I feel like a fool talking about this," or "I feel like a
that's
fool
right.
talking this way."
Which means he's embarrassed,
And
right?
He's embarrassed by it. But what he's trying to say is, "I'm not asking you to suffer, and then I'm staying in my office not suffering."
Right.
He said, "I'm not asking you to risk your life when I'm not willing to." He said, "It's worth it, and I'm out in the front leading. I'm not behind pushing."
And remember,
that's why he does that.
Remember, he also said, "Hey," he goes, "I worked so as to not be a burden to you." Remember that?
Right.
So he was also saying
He wouldn't even take any money
he
from
wouldn't
him.
even take any money.
Right.
He's like, even though I could have, and technically you should have taken care of me,
Right.
But I just wanted to go overboard. So he is the extreme example.
And so he's saying here at the end, at verse 18, he says they've been talking about Stephanus and Fortunatus and Achaicus. He says, they've been a wonderful encouragement to me as they have been to you. You must show your appreciation to all who serve well. He never says you should take care of me, but he's always making sure that his guys and the people that God's put around him are being cared for and respected and all that kind of stuff. So I love that part of it. And then he just pauses for some reason. In verse 13 says, "So be on guard, stand firm in the faith, be courageous, be strong, do everything with love."
Yeah. And by the way,
Where did that sentence come from?
that verse is amazing. I've seen this written on posters. I've seen it in gyms, like Christian gyms. Be on guard, stand firm in the faith, be courageous, be strong, do everything in love.
Yeah.
Good. If you do just those things, that one verse, right? I mean, you would just be a heck of a person for people to look up to.
That's right. So then, as you're kind of coming into the conclusion, he has given them some of his travel plans, right? Man, I really want to come to you, and I'm heading this way. Maybe after Pentecost, I'll try to get down that way. I'm sending some other people, and then he's making sure that the other churches understand, or that the church in Corinth understands they're not alone. The other churches are thinking about him, praying for him too. He talks about
all
the churches here in the province of Asia are sending greetings, right? This idea that we're not in competition with each other. The church down the road shouldn't be a competitor against us.
No, that's a good thing to draw out of this.
Right? That's what he's saying.
Yeah.
Hey, we're on the same side.
Right.
Hey, you love Jesus, and so do the churches in Asia. They love Jesus. We should not only be thinking about our own little kingdoms. We shouldn't be thinking about our own little church families. We shouldn't be thinking, because then it makes Christianity so much smaller. But when we realize we're all caught up in this movement of God around the world, we should love the other churches. We should grieve when we know other churches are struggling. We shouldn't delight in them. There's been some podcasts that have been kind of, it's kind of been church collapse porn for a lot of people, where they spend a bunch of time just digging deep into what happened, and rather than it just being educational for a few pastors to learn, hey, I shouldn't do that. Instead, for millions of Christians, it's just been, oh, those horrible people, that's terrible over there, that's rotten, right? And it becomes kind of this backdoor celebration of failure, rather than we should be grieving when they grieve. We should delight when we find out a church down the road gets to open a new building, or when we find out a church down the road was able to baptize a bunch of new believers, or they launch some great ministry and it's having a great impact. We should delight in it. We should not delight in the destruction or the fall of others. We should celebrate when they succeed, and we should grieve when they're struggling and having, and this is kind of the message he sends over and over and over to them.
Yeah, well, Jesus said, I and the Father are one, and he said, Father, I pray that the church would be one.
Yeah.
Just as you and I are one, so that others may believe that you have sent me. And so he gives us instruction to consider ourselves as one.
Yeah.
And to your point, they're not the competition.
Right.
So, on a Sunday morning, we try to get as many people as we can, to draw them in to, hear the gospel. And so you would say, well, who's your competition? Well, it's certainly not the church down the street that believes like us. It's like, the Detroit Lions game.
Yeah.
That's the competition.
It's the pillows.
Right. Or pillows.
Right,
Right.
right. It's
Yeah.
it's the movie theater, it's the golf course, it's the fishing on the lake.
Right.
It's anything else other than Jesus, right?
Right.
That's it. But we're not in competition with other churches. And this I think is important for pastors and for Christians to realize. In our county, there's 881,000 people in our county. 57% have they don't even claim any religious affiliation. Only 5 or 6% are in church on any given Sunday total in the whole county. So that would mean about 80,000, less than 80,000 people, 40-something thousand people are in church on a Sunday. So I tell pastors all the time, there's tons of people who are far from God. Just go get you some. If we're all fighting over the few thousand that are following Jesus in our county, then you're right. Then we're in competition with each other. But if our focus isn't on trying to grab other Christians from other churches, and instead our focus is on reaching people who are far from God, there's tons and tons and tons of them here. We're not in competition. And I think this is kind of what the message that Paul subtly sends in most of his letters is that the other churches are paying attention. They care about you. They love you. We love each other. Or sometimes he'll say, pray for them. So at the beginning of the chapter, he's saying, Jerusalem's struggling. And so we need to receive an offering for them. And then at the end of the chapter, he's saying, hey, the other churches in Asia, they love you guys. And just wanted you to know that.
That's great.
Right? How great is that?
Well, apparently, Jeff, there was a lot to pull out of these personal greetings and farewell instructions.
That's right. So may the grace of the Lord Jesus be with you.
Thank you, Jeff.
That's what he says in verse 23.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, that's probably a great place to end. And hopefully we will see you tomorrow on the Bible Guys.